I still remember the sound of his laugh. Loud, careless, confident, the kind of sound that could make even the coldest day feel warm. That was Jin Wook. My best friend since before I even knew what the word best meant. Our mothers used to joke that we were bound by fate. They had been best friends since high school, and before either of us was born, they made a promise over tea and laughter. When our children grow up, they'll marry each other, they had said, laughing, not realizing that words like that could plant a seed so deep it would never quite die. For as long as I could remember, people teased us, calling me Jin Wook's little Omega, or saying they're already betrothed. I used to blush and deny it, while Jin Wook would roll his eyes and say, he's too annoying to marry. But things weren't always that way. When we were kids, he was the one who always stood in front of me when bullies teased me for being soft-spoken, for being too pretty. He'd grab my hand, pull me behind him, and glare at anyone who dared to mock me. Back then, I thought he was my safe place. But somewhere along the way, maybe during high school, things began to change. He got taller, broader, more confident. His alpha scent became stronger, more intoxicating. Everyone loved him. Teachers, girls, even some Omegas. And me? I stayed the same. Slightly shorter, pale-skinned, with features too delicate for a boy. People often mistook me for a girl from behind. At first, I laughed it off. But then, every time someone called me pretty, I'd catch Jin Wook staring. His eyes would linger for a second too long before he looked away, pretending to be annoyed. That was when our friendship began to shift, slowly, painfully, like a rope being pulled too tight. We started competing in everything, grades, sports, even popularity. If he came first, I'd push myself harder. If I got a compliment, he'd double his effort to outshine me. Our closeness turned into a rivalry, and yet, beneath the tension, something still tied us together. We never stopped caring, no matter how much we argued. It was a cold afternoon when the confrontation finally happened. The one that changed everything. We were both in the music room after class. I'd been practicing piano for the upcoming school festival, and he had come in looking for me. "Why didn't you answer my messages?" he asked, leaning against the wall with that usual half-annoyed expression. I didn't even look up from the keys. I was busy. With what? Ignoring me? I sighed, pressing down a chord harder than necessary. "Not everything revolves around you, Jin Wook." He scoffed and walked closer. "You've been avoiding me for weeks, Cha Woo. Even in class, you barely look at me. What did I do this time?" The way he said it, half irritated, half concerned, made my chest tighten. "You didn't do anything," I said quietly. "You just exist." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I finally turned to face him, and the sight of him so close made my heart skip. The sunlight from the window hit his hair just right, casting a soft glow over his sharp features. "Everyone looks at you," I muttered, voice trembling. "You're perfect. You get everything. And I..." "You what?" he interrupted. "I can't keep up anymore, Jin Wook." My voice cracked, and I stood up so fast that the chair screeched against the floor. "You don't even see how much you make me feel small every single day." His expression shifted, confusion, then guilt, then something I couldn't name. "Cha Woo, I never wanted you to feel that way. Then why do you always treat me like I'm your rival? Like I'm something you need to beat?" "Because you're the only one who ever challenges me," he said softly. "The only one who makes me feel alive." I froze. My pulse pounded in my ears. He took another step closer. "I hate how you make me feel sometimes." I swallowed hard. "Then stop feeling it." "I can't." The silence that followed was unbearable. The air between us thickened. His scent, sharp and familiar, mixed with the faint sweetness of mine. "Jin Wook," I whispered, barely breathing. He reached out, his fingers brushing against my cheek. "Why are you trembling?" "Because you're too close." "Then push me away," he murmured. But I didn't. The next moment, his lips were on mine, warm, desperate, trembling. It wasn't gentle. It was years of tension bursting at once. Confusion, anger, longing, all tangled together. I pushed at his chest, but he only deepened the kiss, one hand sliding to the back of my neck, the other gripping my waist. When we finally pulled apart, I was panting. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might break. "We shouldn't have done that," I whispered. He stared at me with those burning eyes. "Then why didn't you stop me?" "Because you wanted it too," he said, his voice low, rough. I couldn't deny it. Not when my body still trembled from the memory of his touch. He leaned his forehead against mine, breathing heavily. "I don't know when I started wanting you like this, Cha Woo. But I can't stop." My hands clenched at his shirt. "You're making it harder to hate you." "Then don't hate me." The words hung between us, fragile and dangerous. That night, our argument became something else entirely. The line we'd drawn between rivalry and love blurred beyond recognition. And by the time dawn came, we had crossed it completely. I thought that night would stay between us, a secret buried under pride and regret. But life had other plans. 3 weeks later, when I stood in front of the bathroom mirror holding a small test strip trembling in my hand, my world spun. 2 lines. I was pregnant. I had never felt fear like that before. I stared at the 2 pink lines again, as if they might vanish if I blinked enough times. But they didn't. They stayed, sharp and undeniable, mocking me with the truth I didn't want to accept. My hands trembled. The room felt too small, too suffocating. Pregnant. The word echoed in my mind like a curse and a miracle all at once. I sat down on the edge of my bed, pressing my palm against my stomach, though there was nothing to feel yet. My heart thudded violently, the sound so loud I swore it might give me away. How could this happen? But I already knew the answer. That night, the fight, the kiss, the heat, the way Jin Wook held me as if I was the only person left in the world. It wasn't planned, it wasn't careful. It was raw, reckless, desperate. And now I was carrying a life that came from it. A part of him. A part of us. For days I couldn't look him in the eye. We still saw each other in class, of course. Our lives were too entwined to avoid completely, but I did everything I could to keep distance. I'd sit on the opposite side of the room, avoid his texts, pretend not to notice when his gaze lingered on me. But hiding something like this, it wasn't easy. My body started betraying me almost immediately. I felt nauseous in the mornings. My scent shifted, softer, sweeter, almost glowing, and people began to notice. I wore extra scent blockers, layered perfume, avoided being too close to any alpha. But Jin Wook, he noticed first. He always did. It happened a week later during gym practice. I was sitting on the bleachers, feeling dizzy, pretending to tie my shoelaces when Jin Wook came over with his usual smirk. Skipping again? He teased, tossing a bottle of water at me. I barely caught it. Just tired. He frowned. You've been tired a lot lately. Maybe I'm just sick of seeing your face. Funny, he said, crossing his arms, because I still catch you looking. I rolled my eyes, but before I could reply, a wave of dizziness hit me. My vision blurred, and I barely managed to grab the edge of the bench before everything went dark for a moment. Cha Woo. His voice sounded distant, muffled, like it came through water. Then I felt his arms, strong and warm, catching me before I fell. When I blinked my eyes open, I was in the nurse's office, lying on the bed. Jin Wook sat beside me, his brows furrowed in that way that always made my heart ache. You scared me, he muttered. You just collapsed. I'm fine, I mumbled, trying to sit up. He pushed me back gently. No, you're not. You're pale as hell. And you've been skipping meals. You think I don't notice? I turned my face away. Why do you care? Because he stopped mid-sentence, exhaling sharply. Because you're my friend. Because you're important. That word, important, made my chest tighten. Don't lie, I said softly. You just feel guilty. His jaw clenched. Is that what you think? That I regret that night? I froze. My pulse jumped. I hadn't expected him to bring it up. Not here, not now. I swallowed hard. You should. Why? His voice was low, strained. Because it ruined everything. He leaned forward. You think that night ruined us? Because I don't. Jin Wook. I can't stop thinking about it, he said, cutting me off. Every time I see you, I remember the way you looked that night. The way you... Stop, I whispered, trembling. Please. He inhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. Then tell me what's going on. You're not yourself. You look exhausted, your scent's different, and... My eyes widened. What did you just say? He frowned. Your scent. Changed. Softer. Sweeter. It's driving me crazy. Panic surged through me. I looked away quickly, gripping the bedsheet so tightly my knuckles turned white. I'm fine, I said again, forcing calm into my voice. Just stressed. He leaned closer, his voice a whisper near my ear. Don't lie to me, Cha Woo. I can smell the difference. My throat went dry. I could feel his breath against my skin, the heat of his presence overwhelming me. I said it's nothing. Then look at me. I didn't. I couldn't. His fingers caught my chin gently, tilting my face toward him. Cha Woo. His tone softened, no anger now, just worry. Talk to me. Please. And for a moment I almost did. I almost told him everything. The fear, the sleepless nights, the tiny fluttering warmth growing inside me. But then the image of him, the confident alpha, the one who always got everything, flashed in my mind and shame swallowed me whole. He didn't deserve to be tied down because of my mistake. So I lied. I'm just tired, I said again, forcing a small smile. You don't have to worry about me. His eyes searched mine, uncertain, but after a long pause, he nodded reluctantly. Fine. But if you keep acting weird, I'm taking you to a doctor. Whatever you say, bossy. He smiled faintly, though it didn't reach his eyes. You're impossible. When he left the room, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. My chest ached with the weight of all the words I couldn't say. Days turned into weeks, and hiding became a full-time job. Loose sweaters, scarves, excuses. Avoiding him when my morning sickness hit, pretending I was fine when I felt anything but. But the guilt grew heavier each day. And so did the small, fragile life inside me. It was a Friday evening when everything fell apart again. The campus was quiet, the air crisp with the coming winter. I'd stayed late to finish some project work when Jin Wook suddenly appeared in the doorway of the art room. You've been avoiding me again, he said simply. I'm busy. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. No. You're hiding something. Don't start this again. I'm serious, Cha Woo. His voice was sharp this time. I've been patient, but I can't take it anymore. You look sick, you flinch when I get close, and you're sent. He stopped, his eyes narrowing. You're pregnant, aren't you? The words hit like thunder. I froze, breath caught halfway in my throat. What? His jaw tightened. I can smell it now. I wasn't sure before, but I know that scent. Tears stung my eyes. You're imagining things. Don't lie to me, Cha Woo. He grabbed my shoulders, not roughly but firm enough that I couldn't look away. Is it mine? The silence between us felt like a knife. I saw his expression shift, from anger to shock to hurt, all in one heartbeat. Please, I whispered. Don't make this harder. Answer me, he demanded, voice trembling. My lips parted, and for a long moment I couldn't speak. My throat burned, my heart screamed. Finally the words slipped out, barely audible. Yes. His hands fell away. He took a step back, eyes wide with disbelief. You should have told me. I couldn't, I said, voice breaking. You were distant, we weren't even talking. How was I supposed to tell you something like that? He ran his hand through his hair, pacing. You thought hiding it was better? Cha Woo, this isn't just your burden. It's my body. I cried. My choice. I didn't want to ruin your life. He stopped, turning to me, his eyes softening. You really think that's what this is? That I'd see it as something that ruined me? I looked down, silent. He walked closer, slowly this time, until he stood right in front of me. This isn't something I can hate, he whispered. Not when it came from you. I felt tears spill down my cheeks. You don't have to say things like that. I'm not saying it because I have to. He cupped my face gently, thumbs brushing my tears away. I'm saying it because it's true. My voice trembled. Jin Wook. He exhaled, resting his forehead against mine just like that night. You've always been stubborn. But you don't have to do this alone. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But part of me still feared it, that once the shock faded he'd regret me. Still, when his arms wrapped around me, warm and steady, I let myself sink into him for the first time in weeks. And for that moment I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could still find our way back. When Jin Wook held me that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Safety. The same safety I used to feel as a kid when he'd stand in front of me on the playground, shielding me from everything cruel. But now there was more than safety. There was warmth. And fear. I didn't know which one scared me more. The next few days passed in a blur. Jin Wook stopped teasing me, stopped keeping his distance. Instead, he hovered, like a storm that refused to drift away. He'd show up early in the mornings, walk beside me in silence, carry my bag even when I told him not to. I hated it. I loved it. Every time he looked at me, his eyes softened in a way that made my heart ache. He wasn't saying much, but I could tell he was trying. One afternoon he cornered me in the hallway again, his tone unusually gentle. You've been avoiding lunch again, he said, holding out a paper bag. Eat this. I blinked. You bought me food? Rice porridge and fruit. It's good for you and, you know. His gaze flickered briefly to my stomach. I sighed. You don't have to treat me like I'm fragile. He tilted his head. You are fragile. You fainted 2 weeks ago. That was low blood sugar. That was you pretending you're fine when you're not. His voice was quiet, firm, but his eyes held something that made me look away. I took the food silently. Thanks, I muttered. He smiled faintly. See? You can be polite sometimes. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. You're still as irritating as ever. He grinned, that boyish grin that always made my chest tighten. You wouldn't know what to do without me. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But deep down I wasn't sure he was. Later that night I sat by my bedroom window, gazing out at the moonlit street. My hands rested on my stomach, still flat, still unreal, but the thought of what was growing inside me filled me with an emotion I couldn't name. Fear, yes, but also love. For something that hadn't even spoken, hadn't even moved. And maybe, just maybe, for the person whose warmth had created it. My phone buzzed. Jin-wook, are you asleep? Me, not yet. Jin-wook, can I come over? My heart skipped. Me, it's late. Jin-wook, then I'll be quiet. Before I could type another word, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Jin-wook stood there in a hoodie, his hair damp from the evening mist. He smiled sheepishly. I brought snacks. The baby might be hungry. I glared. You're insane. Probably. Can I come in? I sighed but stepped aside. Don't wake my mom. He nodded, slipping in quietly. My mother was on a night shift anyway, but I didn't tell him that. We sat on the floor sharing the snacks he'd brought, fruit cups, milk, and a ridiculous number of gummy bears. He watched me eat, his expression soft. You're glowing more lately. Don't start. I mean it, he said seriously. You look peaceful. I scoffed. That's the nicest way you've ever called me tired. He chuckled, and for a while the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was warm, familiar. Like we'd gone back to the days before everything got complicated. Then quietly he said, You still don't trust me, do you? The question hit harder than I expected. I looked down at my hands. It's not that I don't trust you. I just don't know what you want anymore. He leaned forward. I want you, Cha-woo. The words froze me in place. I don't care what anyone says, he continued softly. I don't care about promises our moms made or the gossip, or even if people think I'm crazy for staying by your side. He exhaled shakily, I don't want you to face this alone. I stared at him, the sincerity in his voice cutting through all the noise in my head. Why now? I asked. Why after all this time? He gave a small, helpless smile. Because I was stupid before. I thought if I pushed you away I could stop feeling what I felt. But it never worked. I didn't realize I was crying until his hand reached up to wipe my tears. You always do that, I whispered. Show up right when I finally think I can hate you. He laughed softly. Then maybe stop trying to hate me. The quiet stretched between us again, and in that stillness he leaned closer. His lips brushed mine, soft, unsure, gentle. Not like before. Not rushed or desperate. This one was a promise. When he pulled back, his voice was barely audible. I'll wait for you to believe me. The next few weeks, Jin-wook kept his word. He didn't push. He didn't demand. He just stayed. He'd walk me home every day, send good morning messages, show up with snacks, vitamins, or warm tea. Sometimes he'd talk to the small bump that was slowly beginning to form, whispering ridiculous things like, Hey kid, your other parent is stubborn, but we're working on it. Every time I'd roll my eyes. But every time my chest softened a little more. And slowly the fear began to fade. Then came the day my mom found out. I'd been planning to tell her myself, but she found the prenatal vitamins in my drawer before I got the chance. The confrontation was harsh, emotional. Tears, confusion, anger. She didn't yell, but her disappointment stung deeper than any scream. I just wanted you to have an easier life, she said, trembling. You're still so young. I know, I whispered. I didn't plan for this. She sat beside me, holding my hand. And the father? Before I could answer, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Jin-wook stood there, out of breath, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. Mrs. Cha, he said respectfully, bowing. I'm Jin-wook. I'm the father. My mother's eyes widened. You? He nodded, straightening. Yes, ma'am. And I know I've been foolish before, but I'm not running from this. I'll take responsibility, for both of them. I couldn't speak. I could only stare at him, stunned. My mom studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then finally she sighed. You two really are your mother's children, she muttered. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. That night, after my mom had gone to bed, I walked Jin-wook to the gate. The air was cool, the streetlights casting soft golden halos around us. You didn't have to say all that, I murmured. Yes, I did, he replied. Because I meant it. He turned to me, his eyes glimmering under the light. I'm not perfect, Cha-woo. I mess up. I get angry. But one thing I know for sure, I want to be there. For you, for the baby, for everything. My throat tightened. You're too good at saying the right things. Maybe because I've been rehearsing them for months, he said with a faint smile. I laughed quietly, wiping a tear. He reached out, brushing his thumb across my cheek. Don't cry. You'll make the baby think I'm the bad guy. I snorted. You are the bad guy. He grinned. Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving otherwise. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was falling apart. I felt safe. And as I leaned against his shoulder, listening to the quiet rhythm of his heartbeat, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit before. I still loved him. Maybe I never stopped. Time passes differently when you're waiting for something that changes everything. 1 month became 2, 2 became 4, and before I knew it, the world around me seemed to soften. My body changed, my steps slowed. Every small kick reminded me that life had found its way into mine. Unexpected but real, fragile but strong. And through it all, Jin Wook stayed. Not out of guilt or duty, I could see that now, but because he wanted to. He came to doctor's appointments, learned how to make soup when I couldn't stand the smell of food, bought ridiculous baby clothes online, and once, when I couldn't stop crying for no reason at all, he just held me until the tears faded. I'd never realized how much I'd missed being held without conditions. One evening, about 7 months in, he brought me to the park near our old neighborhood, the same one we used to play in as kids. The cherry trees had bloomed early that year, painting the entire place in pale pink. He spread a blanket on the grass and helped me sit down, fussing as always. "I can sit on my own," I muttered. "I know," he said, smiling as he adjusted the blanket anyway. "But if I don't help, you'll trip and I'll get scolded by your mom." I laughed softly. "She likes you now." "She tolerates me," he corrected. We sat quietly for a while, watching petals drift with the wind. It was peaceful, the kind of peace I never thought I'd have again. Then he said, "Do you remember when we used to come here with our moms? You'd always cry when I ran ahead." I chuckled. "Because you'd leave me behind." "I didn't mean to. I just didn't know how to wait." He turned to me then, his eyes gentle. "I think I spent years running ahead, leaving you behind. But this time, I'm not going anywhere." My chest tightened. The sincerity in his voice was almost too much. "You mean that?" "I do," he said quietly. "I've made enough mistakes, Cha-woo. I'm done pretending I don't love you." The words hit me like a heartbeat, steady, strong, and real. I stared at him, breath caught. "You love me?" "I've loved you for years," he said simply. "I just didn't know how to handle it. I was stupid. I thought rivalry was safer than rejection." A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. "You really are an idiot." He smiled softly. "You're idiot." And then he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't the fierce kind of kiss that came from anger or desperation. It was soft, slow, like the petals falling around us, the kind of kiss that said everything words couldn't. When we finally pulled apart, he pressed his forehead to mine and whispered, "Let's start over. No more running." I nodded, my hand instinctively resting over the curve of my stomach. No more running. The last months of my pregnancy weren't easy. There were days I could barely move without wincing, nights when fear crept in, fear of the unknown, fear that I wasn't ready. But every time I faltered, Jin Wook was there. He'd hold my hand through every appointment, learn breathing techniques like some overzealous dad from a prenatal class, and whisper soft encouragements when my body ached. Sometimes I'd wake up at night and find him asleep beside me, his hand resting protectively over my belly. Once I whispered into the dark, "You'll be a good father." He stirred, half asleep. "Only if you promise to be beside me." "I'm not going anywhere," I said softly. And then came the day everything changed. The contractions started early in the morning. Sharp, unpredictable, terrifying. My mother rushed me to the hospital, and Jin Wook arrived minutes later, panic all over his face. Hours passed in a blur of pain, tears, and his hand never leaving mine. "You're doing great," he kept whispering, his voice trembling. "I'm right here. Just breathe." And then, amid the chaos, came the sound that would forever change everything. A tiny, piercing cry. The moment I heard it, all the fear, all the pain vanished. They placed a small, wriggling bundle in my arms, and the world stopped. Tiny fingers. Soft breaths. So fragile, so alive. My throat tightened. "Hello there," I whispered. "I'm your Appa." Jin Wook leaned over, tears streaming down his face. "And I'm your other one." I laughed weakly. "You're already crying." He grinned through tears. "You're one to talk." We both laughed, exhausted, broken, overjoyed. For the first time, it didn't matter what the world thought. It didn't matter that we'd started as rivals, that we'd fought, hurt each other, lost years to pride. Because in that tiny heartbeat between us, everything made sense. Weeks later, our families gathered at my mom's house for dinner. My mother, who once worried endlessly, now held our baby proudly, her expression soft and proud. Jin Wook's parents came too, and instead of tension there was laughter, stories, even tears. It felt surreal, all the years of distance now replaced by warmth. After dinner, when everyone had gone home, Jin Wook and I sat together on the balcony. The baby slept in my arms, his small breath steady against my chest. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Jin Wook asked quietly. "Every day," I said honestly. He smiled faintly. "I don't regret any of it. Not a single thing. Because every path, even the wrong ones, led me back to you." I turned to him, heart full. "You're too sentimental." "Maybe," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. But if loving you is sentimental, then I'll be that forever. The night air was cool, but his warmth was enough. I leaned against him, my eyes heavy with peace. You know, I used to think we were cursed, I whispered. That the promise our moms made just made things harder. And now, I smiled. Now I think maybe it was fate. He kissed the top of my head, his voice low and sure. Then I'm glad fate was stubborn enough to bring me back. The baby stirred slightly, letting out a soft sound, and Jin Wook's hand immediately reached out to soothe him. Watching him, my chest filled with something quiet and profound. Love, not the fiery, chaotic kind we'd once drowned in, but the steady, lasting kind. The kind that grew through every argument, every tear, every laugh. The kind that survives. As I watched the moonlight spill across the floor, I whispered to the sleeping child in my arms, "You're our new beginning." Jin Wook smiled beside me, his fingers entwined with mine. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for happiness. I was living it.